Hey everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 71 of the Rambler Podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. And today we're thrilled to have Mr. Aaron Waters on as a guest. Aaron graduated from Cathedral Prep in 1996 and is currently the owner of and CEO of OEM Interactive and AdWatter Holdings. Under his leadership, OEM Interactive has been recognized on the Inc. 5000 list as one of the fastest growing privately owned companies in the U.S. for 2 consecutive years. Before founding OEM Interactive, Aaron built a strong foundation in advertising and media, serving as vice president at one of Boston's largest advertising agencies and working with NBC. A former standout student athlete, Aaron excelled in cross country, track, and wrestling, where he earned over 120 victories. He was a 3-time Triathlete Award winner and was named High School Athlete of the Year in his senior year. His dedication to athletics earned him a full wrestling scholarship to American University, where he pursued and completed his studies. Aaron currently resides in the Boston area with his wife Noelle and their 2 children, Marcelino and Ariel. Aaron, what a pleasure. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We were just joking, long time coming, because you and I, we connected probably almost 2 years ago on LinkedIn, kind of in regards to the podcast.
Yeah. No, I am thrilled to be here. You've been doing an amazing job with the podcast, and like you said, it's been a long time in the making and a long time coming, and I'm just happy to be here. Pleasure.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the compliment there, but it's one of the things that makes me so passionate about the work I do here at Prep is the network, connecting with people. Like, I didn't know you 3 years ago, but here we are sitting here today to do the episode, and we've seen each other and talked with each other many times now.
Man. Yeah, I love it.
And I mentioned that you reside in Boston.
Don't hate me. Okay, just because I moved to Boston, like, my roots are still here, and I'm not, I haven't turned into some like crazy wacky Patriots fan or anything, so like, don't hate me.
That's good for all the listeners to know. And then I wanted to mention, you flew into town today for tomorrow, which is quarter sessions.
Yes.
We kind of planned this back in August or September.
Excuse me. Sorry.
We planned this back in August or September, even for you to come to town, do quarter sessions, which is again tomorrow, and do the podcast episode. So just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule, away from your family, coming back and talk to the kids at Prep tomorrow, and today also. We got you on a little speaking circuit while you're here.
I love it. I'm so excited. I'm just humbled to be here and for the opportunity to be asked and come back, and it's really full circle for me. And if you would have asked me, hey, 30 years from now, you're going to be here and you're going to be talking to the students because of X, Y, and Z, I would have probably, laughed and chuckled and felt like, okay, if you say so. But no, it's great, and I'm excited to talk to them on like an individual basis and as a group, as a whole. It's been a long time since I've been up on that stage talking, and I think the last time I was up on that stage doing anything was for like a rally, and I was trying to think about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, like the last time I was on that stage was for my senior year. Receiving the High School Athlete of the Year award. It was towards the end of the year, and that was a great honor, and I didn't expect it. But before that, I think it was for the rally for the our basketball team my senior year, going to the state tournament and getting them fired up and getting their send off. Right, and I think I was like David Letterman. I was playing David Letterman in the skit. Right. And Phil Drexler was Chris Farley. He was my guest and my co-host.
Oh, how fun!
Playing Matt Foley.
That would have been really cool to see.
So I was trying to. I'm pretty sure that those were the last two times. But once again, it's amazing to be back. Was back last summer, or maybe 2 summers ago, when you gave us the tour of the new facility and stuff, and I brought my family in, and that was kind of a full circle moment for me and my family and my wife to get to see where I went to high school at, and because I've been talking about prep for years, and she's like, yeah. And then when she toured the school, she was like, wow, like this is really an amazing place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, and this is all the new stuff,
right.
And it was an amazing place back, when I went to high school, and, my son got a kick out of it, and obviously my daughter's too young to know, but, it's great to be back, and, this place has a very special, place in my heart, that will always and forever be there. And I bleed orange and black. My company's colors are orange and black.
Right.
Like if people ask me like what this place means to me, like it means everything. Like when I started my company, I was like, oh, okay, you start with like the name, the brand, or the concept, and you're like, okay, where do you begin? And I'm just orange and black.
Orange and black. Gotta be orange and black.
It's got to be orange and black. And so, and many people ask me like, how did you come up with that? And I'm just like, that was easy. Like,
so your love for the school is evident now, right? I'm sure everyone can feel that sense of pride and passion you have. When did that? The question I have lined up for you is why did you decide to attend prep? So it kind of takes us before that love was really developed, right, for the school, and that passion became created. What even led you deciding to become a Rambler?
So I think it was decided at a very young age, right? Like God bless my mom and dad, and they it was pretty much decided upon when I was in grade school, and I went to public school. I went to Girard, grew up in the Girard school district, and my mom and dad just wanted something different, and they wanted something better than what they had, and it was really decided in grade school. You're going to go to prep. This is how it's going to be, and we want you to have a better education and better opportunities than we had, and we're going to do whatever we can to send you there. And so it was decided then, and why was it decided then? Because prep just had a track record of excellence and just different opportunities than say, and it's not to say anything bad about the school district that I grew up in. They just wanted something different, and there was different opportunities than there were at the public school, right? So that's when it really started, and my friends would ask me like, "Are you seriously going to prep?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to prep for high school." This is back in like third, fourth, and fifth grade. Like it was just a household thing, and then when it got to that time, to make that decision, it was a no-brainer. And then my parents, like, we didn't have a lot in terms of means and money, and my mom had a full-time job, and she worked 2 part-time jobs to send me here. And like I think about that every day, and my dad worked hard too, and my dad took he was asked to be an assistant wrestling coach as well. And so my dad was assistant wrestling coach, and he took that that salary and put it back into my education. And but it was decided at a very early age, and that's where it really where it came from. I think like just my parents seeing what prep was doing on a what the students were doing and how the kids were growing up and getting out into society, and they were becoming role models in the society, and the leaders in the community. Right? The leaders in the community, if you like tied them back, well, where did they go to high school at? Well, they all went to prep. And so excellence breeds excellence. Right? And so that's really where it started from.
Well, it's great to hear, and it's pretty neat to hear that story about how you knew as soon as even third, fourth grade. And a lot of times when people have told me that kind of sentiment, it's been their dad and grandpa went there. Or they just knew that's where they were going. They were in Blessed Sacrament and all their friends were going to be going to prep. They knew they were going to be going to prep. It's cool to hear a little bit different perspective on that, where you were a public school kid. Yeah. Your parents weren't necessarily, did they go to Prepper Villa themselves?
No.
Okay. So, they weren't necessarily Prepper Villa, family.
Yep.
But they saw the opportunity that you had at prep and knew that that would be where you were going to go, and obviously made the right decision.
Yeah. And it was, like I said, like they just wanted different opportunities than they had. They had gone through the public school system. And once again, like there's nothing wrong with that. I send, my son Marcelino goes to public school.
Yeah.
But they just wanted something. They wanted something different, and they knew the opportunities that the school had and have. And it was, really a no-brainer. Whether I was going to be competing in sports or not, this was where I was going. Yeah. And at when you're in third grade or fourth grade, like nobody knows what the future holds, right? From an athletic standpoint. And that's not the sole reason why I went here. But it wasn't like, people were knocking on my door, with bags full of money that, that everybody seems to think happens here at this school. Like the rumors are just so obnoxious and so funny. They recruited and they recruit and they gave this guy so much money and they gave this guy so much money. I'm like, huh? Like,
you're still waiting for your
I'm
check.
still waiting for my checks. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it could be said, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but like when I was in 8th grade, coming into 9th grade, there's a handful of guys, that were coming in from, like junior high to the high school level, like in the state, that were some of the best guys in the state, coming into taking that next step. And, I could have been categorized as one of those guys. Right. And like, I didn't get any money, and Coach O, wasn't at my door and, knocking on my door going, hey, you got to come here. Yeah. And, it was like, I always say this, and I've told you this in the past. It's an old marketing saying that was, handed down to me. The greatest form of marketing is running a perfect shift. Okay. And what does that mean? Right. And it means that if you're running and operating at like your highest possible level and you're out there doing your thing, look, people are going to talk about it. And you go to that restaurant and you have an amazing experience, right? The greatest form of marketing for a restaurant is word of mouth. Yeah. You're not doing, all these digital ads or this or that, like, crazy TikToks and whatnot. It's once you get in there and you experience it and you have an amazing time, you go back the next day and people are asking you about your weekend and, oh, it was great. I went to La Padrona. It was phenomenal. Oh my God, you gotta go. And that passion that you talk about that place, and it's the same thing with this place. Yeah. And that's what this place does. Right. And they operate at a different standard, at a different level, right? You see these restaurants that operate, that get the Michelin stars. Well, why are they getting that? Because they operate at a different level than, XYZ restaurant. Yeah. And that's what this place does. It has different standards in place, different standards for behavior, different standards for the way that you look, the different standards for the way that you act, the different standards for academics. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And we hold ourselves here to a higher standard. And that is the best form of marketing for this place. And that's why people come to this place, not because of full stacks of cash and, like, oh, we're going to sorry, like it doesn't happen. And
that is actually a really good point, because your parents were attracted to sending you to prep because of that standard that they knew you were going to receive.
Yeah.
As you were at prep, your love and passion for the school grew as you became in that culture, in that standard of excellence. You fell in love with that culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree with you to the extent that when people ask me about, what was it for you at prep? What was your favorite thing? This and that. It's never a specific day. It's never a specific moment, or I love this event, or I did this or that. For me, the thing I always talk about is that brotherhood and that standard of excellence. That's why I start the podcast by saying we're sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence, because that's what we're known for. But who are the people now on the alumni part of it, the other side of their 4 years at prep? What are they doing, that embodies what it means to be a man or woman of prep or Villa, out there in the community today? When you were in your years at the school, and so now you're a student at the school, going through your freshman, sophomore year, were there certain teachers who really impacted you through your years at prep?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to apologize right out of the gate if I don't mention some, because all the teachers were impactful.
Sure.
I really want to, and I'm not just saying that to say that. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the school and a lot of other things. But it is a collective, a group effort. The teachers, the faculty, the staff here are second to none, right? And they take pay cuts coming here, and or at least back in the day, you could get paid more at a public school than here. And I don't know if that's changed or not, but the teachers here came for a purpose, and they were purpose-driven leaders. And the faculty and staff, they all were, and so they all need to know that. And the ones that really had impacts on me, obviously Coach Ed Honorato. He's not only a coach, he was a teacher. Health and driver's ed, or as we so eloquently put, driving with ed, and mentor, just an amazing human being, a spiritual leader, a philosophical leader. He not a lot of people know this. He wrote the book, The Philosophy of Wrestling, and he would give it to all the wrestlers, like all the freshmen when they came in. He would give them a copy of that.
That's cool.
And I really would love for that to get recirculated and back out to the wrestlers, and to keep his legacy living here, because I think that man embodied everything that this school is, mind, body, and spirit. And I'm not just saying that because I spent a lot of time with him. If you weren't a wrestler and you had him, in class, and if you just talked to him, he'd talk to you from a different level. And at, he'd be sitting in the stands at a wrestling match, and he's reading books on philosophy, like Nietzsche, like books, and he'd be sitting there and he'd be like, "Oh, I gotta go coach now. Oh, okay," and close the book and go over there, and you're like, okay, and he would come to you and he would talk to you at things, and he always took his time processing what you said to him, and giving you a really caring, spiritual answer, right? So I would love for that book to start being recirculated, and he, like I said, he really embodied everything that the school is all about. And he could have coached anywhere in the country, and he could have coached at a college level, and he did. Right, but Coach O, Mr. Del Rio, a lot of people, he was one of those ones that it was like Does he like me? Does he hate me? I don't know. And he played no favorites. I mean, he was just one of the smartest guys I've ever, came across. I think he spoke
the legends of all his degrees and what he did in his career. I think every year he added something to it. Because by the time I was there, it was...
Yeah, and he was, teaching here, and then he was a professor at Edinburgh.
Yeah.
At nights, and then, I think he spoke fluently 8 different languages or something.
Amazing, man.
And just an amazing, super smart human being. Mr. Del Rio, Mr. George. I spent a lot of time with Mr. George. I was friends with Owen, so I got to know Mr. George on a personal level, outside of school, and he was a great guy. Mr. Pechtel was great, an amazing human being, great coach, great teacher, great mentor. I mean, there's a lot, and I know that I'm missing Mr. Sytuck. I always had a great relationship with Mr. Sytuck, and the last time I was in town, I think I told you I ran into him and his wife at a restaurant here, and I went up and I introduced myself, and he was like, you look a little bit older, and I was like, yeah, the time has that, and they were celebrating their wedding anniversary, so I just said hi and I walked away.
Yeah.
But he was great. There's a lot. Mrs. Mullen, enough can't be said of that woman. Want to talk about just an amazing, human being who, commanded the presence and attention when she walked in a room, and you did not get out of line, and she did not, let you pull one little thing.
100%.
And she walked in that room, you were alert, at attention, and not messing around.
Yeah.
And I always loved Sister Rachel in the front office, in the main office. She and I always had a great rapport, and she was very special. Same with Sister Jim, but I was never smart enough to be in any of Sister Jim's classes, so I never really had too much interaction with her. I was in the main office a lot for
apparently,
one reason or another with Sister Rachel, and I just remember Sister Rachel saying to me one time, "Mr. Waters, your charm will not work on me today." and I was like, "But sister," and she's like, "Stop it right there." And I'm like, all right. But I really want to go back to the first thing that I said. The teachers here, second to none, and they sacrificed a lot to be their purpose-driven leaders and purpose-driven teachers. And I know that I'm missing some. Mr. Deschner is great as well. So please forgive me, teachers, if I didn't mention you guys, but you all are there.
Yeah. So many great teachers through the years, and it's what's made the fabric of prep, right? Is those teachers who've been here 20, 30, 40, Deschner, 50 years when he retired. Just amazing human beings, and many of the teachers you've named I had. I gotta say, there's a lot of new faces now in the school.
Yeah.
A lot of those teachers that you mentioned, they were kind of at the end of their run by the time I was here.
Yep.
So it's been neat to see the changing of the guard, but that same passion, that same level of purpose, those same standards of excellence, so many of the teachers today still carry that legacy of what it means to be a Rambler, what it means to be a student at Prep with them, and it's what makes me feel very encouraged about the school's future, as we have so many amazing teachers still here today. And it's great to see, there's a lot of really good things happening at the school right now, and it's fun to do the little walk down memory lane with the guests before we get into some of the career questions. And
No, I love it.
But I appreciate you taking the time to reflect with us a little bit on those things, because it's what bonds us, what connects us all, is those roots there between prep and Villa. Those years that we shared at the same institution.
Yeah. Mr. Leisenring, you remember, I don't know if you had captain. So he was a former Navy captain. He was a history teacher.
Okay.
And he taught history like it was a college, course. And I mean, he would paint the picture of Alexander the Great, and just like riding on his horse, and like he did an amazing job. And he was a no nonsense guy too. And he was in for a short tenure, but he was so no nonsense that after a year or two of teaching, they moved him in as like the, I forget his title, but it was like disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Right? And, the first day that we had him, I'll leave you with this for the teachers here. He said, "Gentlemen, there's 3 things in life that I hate." He goes, "warm beer, wet toilet paper, and a smart ass." And he's like, "If we can avoid all those things, we'll be in a good place here." And we're all like, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Sure, no problem. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Well, and I think it just goes to show that level of the standards, right? Back to, he's setting the tone early with the boys. Like, you got to make sure you do this.
Yep.
That's funny. And it's so cool to reconnect with you, or I should say, not reconnect, because we didn't know each other from prep, but connect with you from the other side of things, like to see all the amazing things that you've done, kind of as we transition this conversation now to what you've done in your career is awesome to see. I remember 2 years ago when you guys were first named in the Inc. 5000, I was so excited for you. I reached out, and it was an awesome honor. I know it was a big deal for your company to be able to be on that list, and then to repeat for the second year in a row, I'm sure it was another just, awesome moment. So I think, for the sake of our listeners, we'll dive into some of the questions that I can kind of pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
Learn about some of the things you've done in your career and some things that we might be able to learn from you and kind of be able to use in our own careers. But before I dive into some of those specific questions, but what even inspired you to take the leap and start your own company? Because I think it's one thing, I mentioned in your bio, you were working for a place for a while. You had probably some really good things going on. And then what inspired you to take the leap to then start your own venture? Yeah,
so I'm going to go back a little bit because I think that this is like a full circle moment about, you mentioned the Inc. 5000 thing. And so what that, basically what that is, Inc. magazine has their 5,000 fastest growing privately owned companies in the U.S. And we were, and it's always been a dream of mine to get on that list, whether I'm working for a company that's driving towards that, or whether it was my own. And it's been a dream of mine for a very long time. And as I felt like if I was in an organization that was driving towards that, we would be in a good place, right? Like that would be a really great achievement. And there's, all these companies, the Fortune 500 companies that have been on that list, and it's like, okay, wow, this is quite an achievement. And a guy like myself, coming from where I came from, not, like my parents didn't have a business, and I didn't grow up in the business and understand the ins and outs of being an entrepreneur, and and living that and being like in the going to the shop or going to the my dad's office or anything like. I didn't have that opportunity, right? And that exposure. But when I first found out about it, I was here in Erie. And that morning, I was here with my family, and that morning is when we toured Prep. And so we did the tour, and we did the tour with you and had a great time, and then afterwards it was like lunchtime, and so my wife was like, "Hey, let's go over to Oliver's and have lunch," and so we went over there and had to get a walleye sandwich.
Of course.
Come home, you got to get a fried fish sandwich. It's phenomenal. You can't get them anywhere else but here, and our daughter was about one, maybe 1.5 at the time, and she's real finicky, real fussy, as any young baby is. And around that time, it's like her nap time, right?
Yeah.
So she was crying, and I said to my wife, I was like, hey, look, like, you guys stay here, just wait for the food. Like, if it comes up, just eat. I'll take her downstairs and walk her around outside and try to put her to sleep.
Yeah.
And so got her to sleep, and we started going up, went back up the elevator to Oliver's, and I'm checking my email while I'm in the elevator, and elevator doors open up, and I see this letter from Inc. magazine, and I look at it, and it's like, congratulations, like, you've made the list, and da 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 da. And I immediately was like overcome with emotion, because it was, 40 something years in the making.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm walking to the table, and I had a really hard time controlling my emotions.
Yeah.
And I got tears coming down my face, and my wife looks at me, and the first question she asked, she goes, "Who died?" And I started laughing, and I was like, "No." And I proceeded to tell her.
Yeah.
And so it was like a huge full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
Right. And what was really special about that was it happened here. I found out about it here. That morning I was here at Prep, and I felt like the school, got to share a little bit of that, like just being like full circle, coming back to my roots, where I came from. And that moment still holds a really special place in my heart, and always will. And it was just awesome to be able to share that. And frankly, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to share that moment, because it was like I toured the school that morning, and it was just like the course of events. So I thank you for for that, and connecting with me. And but how did I get into starting my own company? I've always just been like a self-starter and like doing my own thing, I guess. I was VP of one of the largest advertising agencies in Boston for about 8 years or so, and I loved it there, and the people there were great. The agency was great. I just felt like I was in a place where I wasn't seeing the growth that I wanted, and I also felt like I wasn't happy. And it wasn't. And this is nothing against the that company, because I love the owner, and he was a mentor, and I just wasn't being fulfilled, and I felt like there might be something else out there for me, and so I made the decision to leave, and it was a difficult decision, and we had just had our first child, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. But I made a list, and I said, look, like, I'm going to create a company. I'm going to, I'm not quite sure what I know it's going to be in the advertising space. And so we were in a place financially where it made sense, where we could do those things and just kind of take a bit of a break. And I took a lot of the things that I was really passionate about, and started pulling all those things together. And and fast forward, we created OEM Interactive. Working tirelessly and into the wee hours of the morning, and 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and my cat is sitting next to me on the couch, keeping me company. And OEM Interactive is a very niche advertising agency, and we focus exclusively in the auto parts and accessories sector. It's not the sexiest industry, but we're like a one of one type of agency in the US, and we found our space, and we're an advertising agency, but we're also like a business consultant too. And so we work with a lot of car dealerships and a lot of people that sell auto parts and accessories online or that want to. And, knowing how Fortune 500 companies work at a high level and e-commerce at a high level, we can take those principles and apply them to people that have never really been doing anything online and get them operating and executing at an extremely high level where some agencies that kind of play in our space, they don't have that experience and they don't know how to get from here to here. So we're already way ahead of them.
Yeah.
And so, we went from 1 to, 5 accounts to 5 to 10 and then 10 to 20. And, now we've got a couple hundred and, we're servicing people in all over North America and Canada and all over the place.
That's so cool.
But it's I love being an entrepreneur. I love being a leader, and the people that I work with, they have this nickname for me. They're just like, Aaron, our fearless leader, and I tell them all the time. They'll give me like a Christmas card or something. It's like, to our fearless leader, and I'm like, guys, I go, I appreciate the title. I go, but I'm so fearful, and my fear fuels everything. And so like, I take the fear so that you guys don't have to. And like, just know that I'm human too.
Yeah.
And I'm fearful every day, and like, I let that stuff motivate me, and I let that stuff drive me and fuel me, so, but I embrace it. And, it's not always easy being, being the boss and being, the business owner. It's not all glitz and glamour and stuff like, but, that's the nature of the business. Yeah.
Well, it's such a cool story you're able to share with us about when you got that email.
Yeah.
You found out you were part of Inc., the list that you were just sharing in the beginning there. The fact you were at prep that morning, you were in Erie. It was one of those situations that, again, when you said, like, it just brings you back to your roots. And, like, forever, that will be your story to share about when you found that out, which is really cool. When you think about the things you've done to help grow your company, to get to a place where you got that recognition, like, obviously we can hear it's very emotional for you, it's very real, but what are some of the takeaways that you can share with us? What do you think are some of the keys to the success that helped you grow a business to the point where you get a recognition like that?
I mean, look, it's there's everybody thinks like it's easy, and you got to have a vision, and you got to be willing to. At the end of the day, the short answer is extremely hard work, right? It's work ethic, and if you're not willing to put in the work, if you're not willing to take, and everybody thinks it's kind of like this cliche statement, and it's the truth. It's the work, the grind. And you have to be able to embrace it and go, look, like, I know that there's going to be failures along the way. I know that I'm going to make mistakes along the way, and I need to be comfortable with those things, and I need to learn from all those failures, and I need to learn from those mistakes. I can't regret anything, right? Nothing whatsoever. Get regret out of your mind, out of your vocabulary, right? I have a quote that I kind of like, a quote motto that I live by, and that it's regret is a mistake that you haven't learned from. And I tell our team that all the time. I'm like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't, just go and, we'll learn from those mistakes. But at the end of the day, it's having a vision, having a game plan, and execute, 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 execute. Something I'll say to students tomorrow, and it's a quote that I came up with years ago, is growth happens when dreams collide with execution. And you can have all these ideas, but if you're not willing to execute upon those ideas are nothing. They're just ideas. And ideas are great.
Yeah.
But until you're willing to execute upon those ideas, they're nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in there's no such thing as a bad idea, right?
Yeah.
It's just, does this idea, is it applicable here? Is it applicable here? When is it applicable? How is it applicable? And, I tell our guys, like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's pin that though, like over here, because that's a step 8 idea. And we're back here at step 2 right now, I think, and do you understand my logic from that?
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, you know what, you're right. So when we get to step 8, we're going to implement that idea. So I don't want to lose that. Right. So, but it is just a grind, and you have to be willing to put it in. And, and I think a lot of that comes from my upbringing and, my parents instilling like a work ethic. You got to go, watching my parents work, watching my grandfather work. I mean, my grandfather was a workaholic, and it's like he'd come home from working, then he'd be out in the backyard working, and it's like, and that's just how he grew up, and that's, it's in my DNA. And, and then the sports that I competed at a high level, like, if you're running cross country, like it's you versus the world.
Right.
Right. Like, nobody to blame at the end of the day but yourself. And, track, same thing. Wrestling, I mean, it's a grind. And, you hear like Joe Rogan talking about like wrestlers in the UFC and stuff, like, okay, if you're going to, have a base for something going into mixed martial arts, what is it going to be? And he's like, wrestling. The wrestlers, their mindset, they just operate at a different level. And I believe that. And I know that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right.
I will grind and 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 grind, and I'll grind some more, and I'll take my lumps, and then I'm learning from my lumps, and I make mistakes every day, and it's just like I got to get better.
Can you talk a little bit about too you mentioned game planning? So I think there's a lot of really good things there. I think vision. Just to go back on a couple things. Vision can be big picture, but then also it's like you talking to one of your employees about, you had the vision to see their idea was good, but they were too early on in the process to implement that. I mean, that's a good component of vision right there too, that I just want to key in on. Is sometimes people think vision, it's like, the grandiose, statement for the organization, but it's also overseeing a project. What's the vision of the project itself too? So I just want to mention that. But obviously the execution, the work, you're hammering us with that. You did mention game plan too. Yeah. Can you just chat briefly about what it looks like for you to set a game plan? And you can go as specific or whatever as you want with that question, but I think it's just important for people to know, like, work ethic is obviously important, but when it comes to game plan and setting up goals and agendas and a plan for something that you want to accomplish, what does that look like for you when you're strategizing and planning out, things for your company?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, you need to know, where you're at and where you're going, right? Like where's the goal line? And okay, now how do we get there, right? And then so we got to kind of back into it and go, all right, if we know our goal is this, like let's work to put together that plan. And are we trying to execute this plan over a 60-day period, over a 90-day period, over a 2-week period? What is that? What are those expectations? And, where are the milestones, right? And how are we going to measure ourselves? And, here's the goal line, but we also want to continue to encourage and set those milestones for for our team members along the way, right? So that they feel like, hey, I've hit that first milestone, and then I hit the second milestone, and then I hit the third milestone. So they're starting to see progress and moving it along, and they're getting closer and closer to that goal line, right? That end goal.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what those sub-tasks and sub-execution points are along the way. And once you get a good idea of what that is, it's just, okay, stop talking about it. Now let's execute.
Right.
And I think a lot of people get, tied up with the talking about it. Like I want to know what the goal, where the goal line is, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on figuring out every single like micro step. Like I know where it's at. This is just my mentality.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think we get caught up, and organizations get caught up in going, hey, look, like, what's that, at milestone 6, what is like subtask or, like B or C going to be? Hey, look, like, we're getting into the micro here on this, and we already have the first 5 milestones. Let's get going. And as we're, shooting through this, we'll figure those other 2 out. And I think a lot of organizations lose time, and they get kind of caught up in the minutia of some of those things. But it's you got to have that game plan.
Yeah.
Understand what the milestones are. How are you going to reward your employees and your team, right? And also yourself, so you know that you're making progress.
Yeah.
And because that's where things kind of get can get frustrating. It's like, oh, I'm not seeing any progress.
Sure.
I'm not seeing any progress, and it brings everybody down.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to having those short-term goals in place are great for any organization, a team, whatever it is,
yeah.
right? Like, oh, we want to be, our goal is to be state champs this year.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Right? And well, in order to do that, we have to be District 10 champs, and then we have to be, we've got to win this tournament, or we got to do this, and and what's our workout schedule, and like when are we going to peak for what events, and
right.
and so on.
Yeah, if you talk to some coaches that are, they have those game plans, that the ones that are really successful, I've seen they have their minute by minute of every practice mapped out.
Yeah.
And everything orchestrated. They have the whole thing planned out. They know exactly who's doing what they're working on. Again, if you walk into practice without a plan, or I think we're going to work on this today.
Yeah.
How much are you going to accomplish versus you planned it the night before, boom, 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 boom. We're going to get all these objectives done. So by the end of it, our team overall accomplished X. You culminate those days to lead to the games, and the games to the playoffs, and hopefully beyond. But that's kind of what, in a sense, in a sports way, you're talking about in a business function too, or professional, is setting those small milestones along the way, mapping it out, and kind of, to what you said earlier, reverse engineering it a little bit.
Yeah, and the way that I look at it too, like I have leads for our departments, and they know what their goals and objectives are for like the quarter and the year, and how that like gets laid in from the whole company perspective, right? And it's like you're responsible for hitting, XYZ in sales, or you're responsible for hitting a retention rate of 98%. So how do we do that, right? And I let them, kind of own that piece of it, but I just ask them very, simple. It's a very simple way of like, from a management perspective, I go, give me your 5, and that's their 5 top priorities that they're working on. And we go through those 5, and all those 5 have to be aligned with what their quarterly goal is, or their yearly, or maybe their monthly. And if those 5 are kind of off, then we discuss that and kind of go, okay, I think we need to reprioritize things here. So, that's kind of how I'm leading and managing, and I want to give them ownership, hold them accountable, but, focusing, like, you shouldn't have any more than 5.
Yeah.
And how are we prioritizing these 5? Is this high level, medium, low?
Yeah.
Right. And anything outside of that, you're your blinders are off and you're too, looking at too much stuff. And we need to really kind of like narrow our vision and knock these things out so that we're seeing more progress. That's how I manage my day and my week. And, Fridays are my busiest day because I'm planning for the entire week.
Sure.
And, and I love Mondays. I said it. Like I love Mondays.
I love Mondays too.
Yeah.
I'm always walking around saying happy Monday and
yeah, like I love Mondays, and on Sunday I get like the itch. On Sundays, I'm like, all right, let's go. Like, am I ready for Monday?
Yeah.
And I'm constantly asking myself, am I ready for Monday? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for Monday because I planned on Friday. Like that's why I got home late on Friday.
Yeah.
Friday is usually the day where it's supposed to be your easiest day, and you get home early. My wife knows, like, it's always going to be 9 times out of 10. I'm going to be home late on Fridays.
Yeah.
And like that's my day.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, that's kind of how I manage things on a day-to-day.
Yeah. No, I feel like we could talk for another hour on
totally.
some of these topics. And I was just looking at the clock. We need to get you over to the school shortly.
Okay. Yeah.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah, please.
Before we get you next door, because you're going to be doing the Lunch and Learn series today.
Yes.
For our listeners, we have our academic pathway programs here at Prep. One of the pathway programs is called the Business Path. So there's students at Prep who they have an interest in pursuing business as a career maybe one day.
Yeah.
That's a broad way to say that they might want to be an accountant, or maybe they like marketing. Maybe they want to own their own business one day. So Aaron's going to be talking with some of those students in the Business Path today as part of their experiences while they're at Prep to kind of learn a little bit more about what that means to be in business. And so the last question for you in regards to the podcast here, while we just have a few minutes, it's one that it's a consistent question I ask a lot of the alumni who come on as a guest. But if you could go back in time, right? So we've been talking a lot about your time at Prep. We've been talking about the things you've done here in the future. But if you go back in time, knowing what you know now, and speak to yourself while you were a student at Prep, what advice would you give yourself?
So. You take time to reflect upon, try to reflect upon that question. And there's, probably 1,000 things I'd like to tell myself. But I think what I would tell myself, my 18-year-old self or my 18-year-old self is don't be so hard on yourself. And I think that, I know that I was really hard on myself, and I was really tough on myself because I wanted so much, and I worked very hard, and I felt like, and I had probably a bit of a chip on my shoulder about how hard I was working and some of the things that I was going through. And because I truly believed that no one, this is what I believed, right? That no one was working harder than me. It doesn't mean that that's the case, right? Because my teammates were all working extremely hard, right? My teammates and my classmates and stuff. But and it's not necessarily about them. It's more so about the competition, right? And I felt like nobody was working as hard as me from a competitor standpoint. But I was very, very hard on myself, and I did not take losses well, and I didn't take failures well, and I let them eat at me and bring me down, and I let them almost destroy me. My dream was to be a state champ. And I lost in the semifinals at states by, I think it was like 2 points or something, and I got taken down at the end of like the second period or something with like 12 seconds left, and that was like the deciding factor. And if I would have won that match, you could say that I could have won the finals match, or I would have, but that's all hypotheticals, right?
Sure.
But I let that eat at me for years, for a very long time. and I let it eat at me when I left this place and when I went into college. And it was really difficult for me. And I would tell myself, just don't be so hard on yourself. It's a game, and you lost. And let's understand why you lost.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity for growth. And I didn't understand that for a long time. And now when I make mistakes, and I do, I own it, I recognize it, and I try to use it as a learning opportunity. And the same thing with my kids. And those are the things that I'm trying to teach my 8-year-old. And my 3-year-old, she's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
And try to, instill in them. And it's like, hey, it's okay to lose. It's okay to fail. We just need to, what did we learn from that?
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell my high school year-old self.
Yeah.
And, Aaron, don't be so damn hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Because I was really, really, really tough on myself. And it definitely affected who I could have been in my early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to shed that feeling. And to this day, I still haven't watched those matches that I lost.
Yeah.
And I won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things that all of us can really learn from that. I think especially the idea of failure, right? We can be very hard on ourselves. If we fail, we don't want to fail. But, through your episode here, you talked a lot about how failure is okay, right? It's okay to fail. It's okay to do those things. And on top of that, what do you learn, though, from it is kind of the most important part of if you're going to have failures, which we all are. That's first off, we're all going to have failures. What do you learn from them? And then to your point here with what you would give advice to yourself is don't be so hard on yourself. I know I would have benefited from that, advice at an early age too. I had to learn that as well as my career and life has gone on. So I really appreciate you, taking time to reflect on that question a little bit and giving us that answer because I think it's something we can all learn and grow from for sure.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah. And this has been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jimmy.
We're sitting here in the it's the advancement house now, but it's the old headmaster's house, and we're gonna walk you over to prep and let you talk with the kids. And tomorrow you'll be talking a quarter session. So it's been a pleasure doing the episode with you, and thank you again for coming to town and serving the students and the community here at Prep.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
You're welcome.